is that we can't. The people we try to impose a future on may not like it. May try to oppose us. May try to destroy us. So, what I'm going to talk about is the one probably you know the least about. It's called the eugenics movement. It started in the late 19th century, and the idea was to use the same procedures that you use to make better cows and pigs and so forth to make better people. And this was really popular back then in ways that, seeing on the other side of World War II, it's hard to believe. And we'll see some quotes from people you may be surprised to hear about. So, first you have to find out who's the right kind of people. Figure out who the right people are. We have to convince them to breed with, that is to have children with, others of the right sort, to make the right sort babies. We have to find ways to stop the people who aren't the right sort from having children. And we have to get rid of the wrong sort of people just in general.
It was amazingly popular in the United States.
Yes, as we will see tomorrow.
Yes. Including among a number of people who would not guess were disposed to this kind of way of manipulating others.
Ways to inhibit people having children. What are they? Sterilize? Right, that was the way that they said was the best. You can say birth control, you can say whatever you like. They say sterilize people, you can't have children. Same thing you do to a cat or a dog. When was the first sterilization law that allowed the government to pick people to be sterilized in this country? Yes.
1929.
Wrong, but a good guess. I'm glad you guessed. 1909. 1907, in Indiana, and California, and in Washington State in 1909. There was a case before the Supreme Court in 1927 which said that these laws should be struck down. The Supreme Court supported the sterilization laws. They were the law of the land in every state that passed. What was the last state to abolish mandatory sterilization? Oregon, in 1981. The total number of people sterilized in the state of California while it was legal there, 65,000. So here's just some quick quotes. Only fit blacks should procreate to eradicate the racist heritage of moral iniquity. Sounds pretty racist, right? That's W.E.B. Du Bois, black man, one of the founders of the NAACP. Birth control is nothing more or less than facilitates the process of weeding out the unfit, or preventing the birth of defectives or those who will become defective. Margaret Sanger, founder of Planned Parenthood. I guess he's a big fan of W.E.B. Du Bois. Okay. Here's the text of a law in Germany in 1935 that prohibited relations of any sort, including extramarital relations, between Jews and anybody else, under penalty of hard labor, prison. Have sex with a Jew, go to jail. Anybody know who Clarence Darrow was? Right, evolution side of the Scopes monkey tribe. Yeah, Inherit the Wind. Chloroform unfit children. Show them the same mercy that is shown beasts that are no longer fit to live. Okay? I'm not trying to say these people are Nazis or evil. I'm trying to say this is how successful that new movement was in making people believe they could engineer better people. Child euthanasia is our duty to defend ourselves and future generations against the mentally defective. In 1950, a doctor in Chicago who let a baby with physical deformities, not mental deformities, starve to death. He convinced the parents that this was the best thing for a child. And there's another Margaret Sanger who talks about fit and unfit. Okay? Now, who decides what's fit? That's the crux. Okay? This sort of sums up the eugenics movement. Some people are born to be a burden on the rest of us. They should not be born. Right? But that's trying to engineer a future. Here's 1925. These are the winners of the fittest family competition. Actually, had competitions to see who was the most something family. It sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? But these This was thought of as science at the time. So this is a scorecard for the Fitter Family's examination at the Texas State Fair. State Fair. This has the imprint of government. And here there are scores. Eugenics, social, psychometric, psychiatric, medical, laboratory, okay. They give them grades as if they were horses or pigs, whatever. Okay. So this is treating people as if they are farm animals. And the belief was that they could make better people with the same thing that they used to make better farm animals. So, this is the Germans, as usual, very efficient. They created a bureaucracy called Action, T4. T4 was Tiergarten Strasse 4, address of the organization that did it. These go around to psychiatric hospitals, determine who was unfit to live, gas them to death in ways that were later used in the death camp. 5,000 children reported as defective by the doctors who oversaw the delivery or the midwives who oversaw the delivery. So they engaged the entire society in determining what was a child worthy of life. 70,000 other people, including mostly people who had mental problems. So in August of 1941, the word got out that this was happening because it was done in secret. And they would tell the parents that the kids that they killed died. So there was a big outcry in the German state. And so it was officially stopped. It was unofficially continued. It continued right up to the end of the war. But what that did was convince the German hierarchy that if they wanted to do this kind of thing, they had to do it in strictest secrecy. Which is why, when they decided to kill the Jews, they did it out of sight of the German people. They did all the death camps, concentration camps, where they would basically work people to death or starve them to death, or in Germany, the death camps where people would be sent to die immediately were in Poland, because they wanted them away from the German people. And the reason they did that, people say, well, why did the Germans know about this? Because the government, from this event, knew that they could not trust the German people and not say no. So they did it in secret. This is the letter that Hitler wrote, which this is the translation of it, which is unbelievably vague, but was used as the authorization for T4. And because T4 blew up, Hitler never wrote another one of these. Everything after that was done by word of mouth. There are some of the Holocaust deniers who will say, well, there's no piece of paper that says, from Hitler, that says, kill all the Jews on me. It's because he learned not to do it. Everything by word of mouth, by order. But what are they doing? They decided the Jews weren't worthy of life. They wanted them out. They wanted them gone. They wanted them dead. This is Auschwitz-Birkenau. These are the places where people are being worked to death. There's another place where they're taken from the trains and marched right into a gas chamber and killed immediately. Because they thought they knew how to engineer better people. So that's a future. That's imposing the future. They said, the future, our future requires the Jews to be gone, and the gypsies, and the homosexuals, and all the various other people they hated. By the way, why did Hitler pick the Jews to get rid of? Think about it. Why would he have picked the Jews? Go.
They were really successful and he was jealous.
No, that's way too easy.
Weren't they the historical scapegoat pretty much all through
Yes.
Europe's history?
Yes. Everybody in Germany, anti-Semitism in Germany was extremely common and been going on for centuries. The interesting thing about Hitler is that the officer who pinned his 2 iron crosses on him was Jewish. His commanding officer was a Jew who recommended him for his decoration. So that's an easy one. Oh well, he was just when I was a kid, they said, oh well, a Jew killed his mother. No, okay. They were convenient. That's it. You wanted somebody for people to hate. Remember I said last time? What do you need to control the people? You give them somebody to hate. You gave them somebody to hate. And once they hated them, they were able to do that. Okay, so
Do you know what was the excuse? Historically? In the West?
in Europe, why? Why the Jews?
So did it have something to do with the fact that the Jews were blamed for killing Christ?
Christ killer.
That was started in the 6th century. Probably before that, Christianity was just another Jewish sect.
Yeah, I mean, Christianity came out of Judaism. Anyway, enough of it. Okay. So, I'm trying to go through this in a hurry because I know it's not. So now we're going to talk a little about historical eugenics. Okay, we talked about changing humanity to be more like we like. And one of the interesting things about the Nazi eugenics movement is that the guys in charge would not have passed the tests. Hitler would not have passed the test to be there. In fact, his grandmother was Jewish. He would have been sent to his own gas chamber. The Germans decided. Oh, and the other thing about it is that the Germans took massive amounts of resources in the middle of a war. So they took resources they needed to fight the war to kill the Jews. And so they set themselves up in this really ridiculous position. They had to choose whether to kill the Jews or win the war. They choose to kill the Jews and lose the war. That's psychosis, right? That's really nuts. So historical eugenics. Anybody read 1984? Okay, good. Okay, it's still in the high schools. Good. One of the things that Winston Smith does is he removes people from the record, right? And he sends back things and says this person is an unperson. George Orwell, he did not make that up himself. This is a picture from 1920 of, this is Lenin talking to a group of Russians. This guy right here is Leon Trotsky, one of the main heroes of the Russian Revolution. This picture came out about 6 years later. He's gone. He's just not there. What would happen is when these pictures would be put out, this picture would be sent to libraries with instructions to go to this book, on this page, cut out this picture. They were literally changing the history they were teaching. This is what I call historical eugenics. Here's another one. That guy, poof, gone. There's Trotsky again. Poof, gone. I didn't like Trotsky. Well, that's not it. This is my favorite. This guy. Gone. He was a general that Stalin decided he didn't like. So suddenly he just vanished. The only reason we know any of this is because some of these pictures reached the West. In the Soviet Union, this picture did not exist. This is from 2013. That guy, gone. So this is not just the 1930s, those crazy people back then.
This has been happening forever.
Yeah.
In ancient Egypt, whenever a pharaoh was kicked out or killed, they'd have to chisel away all the references to the ancient pharaoh who had been overthrown.
Yeah.
So it's easier to do it digitally or by cutting and pasting.
Hatshepsut. There was a Egyptian pharaoh Hatshepsut who was actually female.
Oh yeah.
And when she died, her son decided that it was a bad idea to have had a female pharaoh. So he had her name chiseled out of all the monuments. We didn't know who she was until there was a monument that they forgot. We didn't know she existed. So, but if you change the history, what happened? If I erase somebody from history, what happened?
Some of the content won't make sense.
Well, what makes sort of. Well, pick a number between 1 and 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. What else happened? That's interesting. That's complete role reversal. What happens if I erase somebody from history? Well, I mean, you have to obviously replace pieces. But what happens is everything they said, everything they believed in, everything they were a symbol of is gone. And the reason you would do that is because you didn't want them to be known by the future generation. So that kind of stuff is to try and convince the next generation, and we'll talk about Wikipedia a little bit, the next generation, that your version of history is right. There is no other. In other words, if I come up and I say, Adolf Hitler was a grand fellow who planted flowers, you can go to other history books and say he was an evil person. But if I change all the history books, now this one is the question about global warming. You folks who were here the first day probably heard remember my little tirade about global warming. This is the graph from the UN report 2001, which is based on this graph from 1998 by a guy named Mann. If you read about the study from him a lot. This is the graph. The narrow line is the graph that he came up with. This is the famous hockey stick. That is no longer actually a hockey stick anymore. But so he said, look, current temperatures the highest they've ever been. Obviously global warming. The reason it looked that way is because he changed the records to suit himself. There were some people who actually went and looked back at his data and discovered he had just changed it. This is what really happened. So 1400, 1425, 4/10 of a degree above this is your normal, whatever that is. Okay? So it was much warmer in the past, and in the relatively recent past. And he says, so when people say, oh, it's the highest temperatures they've ever been, they're relying on this old data that has been shown to be incorrect. But this data is still used to this day to prove. Obviously, this is evil, Americans and their SUV. Anybody know about, anybody see Inconvenient Truth? The Al Gore movie? Or his PowerPoint presentation? There were two graphs. Basically, there was this here, and then there was this other one, which was a little bit further forward. Okay, so when this peaks a little bit later and drops down. And he says, well, this is carbon dioxide, and this is temperature. So obviously, when the carbon dioxide goes up, the temperature goes up. Problem is he had it back. This is CO2.
Yeah, that's what.
And this is temperature. And what happens is when the temperature goes up, the CO2 goes up. But everything about his presentation, including his Nobel Peace Prize and his Oscar, is based on that graph. I don't know if he did it on purpose. He prefaced it with the, aw shucks, I ain't a scientist, but he decided to change the history to make you think what he wanted you to think. So when you read history, be careful who you read. This is the last one I'll talk about. This is about global warming on Wikipedia. Everybody looks at Wikipedia, right? Where you go to first, right? Why? Easiest, accessible, well written. I can copy and paste, no problem. Wait, how do you think I got these? Okay, Mr. Colony, thank you. That word. It says he's a scientist. He's not. He's a statistician, programmer. That's all he is. But starting in 2003, he started editing pages on Wikipedia. In the end, he edited 500. He erased people from the discussion. He took people and blocked them from entering the discussion. 2,000. He deleted portions of the historical record. The medieval warm period and the Little Ice Age, they just vanished. Because he didn't like it. He needed this. Yo, I'm in class. He needed this to be true. So he made it true for all of you. He changed it so you would think what he wanted to think. So be careful about your history. All right, communism. What's communism's central tenet?
Egalitarianism, or everybody gets the same.
That's close. Nah, not order. That's every tyranny says order.
Government owns everything.
Huh?
Government owns everything.
They say that the people own everything, but in reality, yes. Okay. You're close. What they say is, from each according to his gifts, to each according to his needs. We'll take care of it. Don't worry. Okay. So, it was thought up by Karl Marx in the 1848. So they wanted to create a planned economy. A planned economy says the state will tell you what to make, how to make it, where to make it, and how many to make it. And that the state will take care of that. If you need his raw materials, you'll get them, and you'll send what you need to him, and so forth and so on. Everything will work, don't worry. The communists came to power convinced that technical progress was the key to success. Direct quote from Lenin: communism is Bolshevism plus electricity. electrification, because this is in 1917 when most of Russia had no electricity. In fact, there was a big board in Moscow that was showing the plan of electrification. And each light, they had all these lights that would light up where all these power plants were going to be. The problem was is when you used it, you had to turn off all the other lights in Moscow. So they wanted to create a new person. Here we are back to the eugenics. But they say this is a new socialist man. So they wanted you to think what they wanted you to think. Think socialist. Think the way we tell you, and all will be well. What really happened, of course, is the party took control. The party decided what was true and what wasn't and punished people who didn't say it. They didn't really try to make you think. They gave up on the current generation and started working on their children with those pictures.
Yeah, and they took children away from families and put them in homes for raising kids.
The communist ideal is that the central government, the party, knows all the wisdom there is. But what happened was Lenin had this interesting idea, and then he died. 1924, he died. And who takes? What's that?
What was murdered?
Well, maybe. So who takes over? Stalin. Now, Stalin is not an ideologue. Stalin's idea about if you say he's wrong, he'll have to kill him. That's basically it.
He was a failed priest, just like Hitler was a failed artist.
Oh, he was also a bank robber.
Yeah, in the bank robber.
So he built a state that that killed millions. In the Ukraine in the late 20s, there was the crops had failed in Russia that year, and Stalin needed money from exporting grain to Europe to build his industrial cities that he wanted to build. So he took it away from Ukraine, and 10 million people starved to death because he said, "I need this, and you don't." That's the worst possible person. And everything that he tried to do was basically undone. Russia spent the next 40 years trying to undo everything Stalin did. And in the end, it ended the Soviet Union. Trying to work out how to deal with what Stalin did took Lenin's state and destroyed it. Communism was a failure. If you look in China, would you say that's actually communism? The Chinese don't really say it anymore either. Right. The Chinese have all these capitalist stuff. I mean, they control Hong Kong. Right? And Shanghai is, if you want to see a capitalist city, go to Shanghai.
They still have the pictures of them stuff.
Yeah, well, you can say the right words. All right, so communists said, okay, we need to create a proper thinking person. Think the way we think, and all is well. The Nazis said, we need you to be the right race. Back to eugenics of a sort. Okay? Where the communists said, be who you like, but you must think what our thoughts. Hitler said, well, we'll just kill everybody who doesn't think our thoughts. And we picked it, we talked about this, he picked it because anti-Semitism was in Germany, was here. It was everywhere. It's something that if you talk to Jews about the Ku Klux Klan or the Nazis or something like that, it's still a hot button issue to this day.
It's coming back in many countries in Europe, and so it's just here too.
During your vote, this is just really good.
Well,
There's a remarkable amount.
but what I said before, somebody Jews are good targets in part because they don't fight back.
So that it is the number of arguments.
That's always handy. So if you hate somebody and you want to beat them up and they don't fight back, boy, that's a lot safer. A little side trip, some additional math. Penicillin. Did I talk about this? Penicillin comes out in 1928, and it cures many diseases. What happened? Life expectancy goes up. It comes out 10 years too late for the flu.
The pneumonia.
No, because
What else?
how tokenizer works. They're tapping on a string or something. They're not tapping.
What else happened?
Yeah.
So let's say I pass this.
Life expectancy was longer. Well, that's by definition, but yes. Some diseases were eradicated. Some diseases were made less endemic and more less common. One I can think of, venereal disease, syphilis and gonorrhea were killed by penicillin. And so very recently that was still true. There are some new strains that are resistant, but in general, you pick up syphilis or gonorrhea, you can be cured of it by some check. Now, before that, syphilis was a disease that drove you solely insane and killed you. Gonorrhea just made it really hard. And you had to worry about passing it around to your friends. Suddenly penicillin comes out and sex again. Everybody can have sex and not worry about it. I picked up a dose from that hooker. No problem. I'll go see my doctor. Yeah. That's a complete change in how we look at sex. Because suddenly, we saw this with AIDS. Okay? With AIDS, suddenly sex became dangerous. With syphilis, it had been dangerous for centuries. Fortunately, people just kept right on going. But suddenly, it can be cured. And now, it used to be you would find in mental wards, you would find people with terminal syphilis who were very like Alzheimer's patients. And there would be thousands. Because there was no cure. Got it? You got it for free. Anybody ever hear of the Great Binge? They don't talk about it much because it's sort of counterintuitive to what they teach us about drugs. In the last part of the 19th century, with the 19th century being more important, up until the middle of World War II, or World War I rather, heroin was legal, cocaine was legal, morphine was legal, opium was legal. You could buy it at drugstore.
So Coca-Cola is called Coca-Cola.
Coca-Cola had caffeine. And the reason Coca-Cola has caffeine in it is because that's it we replaced. Pause that refresh. Morphine was regularly given to women for menstrual cramps. This is no problem. Morphine is pretty heavy-duty stuff, as we know now. But it was just given. And so cocaine addiction, heroin addiction was immensely common. It just wasn't talked about. And amphetamines. 1919, amphetamines are invented. This is artificial, it's speed. It's artificial stimulant. And it was given to World War II and everywhere after to troops. Now, has anybody ever taken speed? I take Ritalin. You take enough of it, and you become, you've seen these stories about people on crystal meth. Meth is methamphetamine. Hyper-aggressive. They start shooting people and they don't stop. They go crazy. They drive their car into people. They do crazy stuff. They do crazy, violent stuff. They used to give this to military troops to keep them awake. As late as the war in Iraq. Okay. So the problem with amphetamines is it leads to really bad side effects. But it was illegal. And in fact, Adolf Hitler, regular user, real speed freak, actually. If you look at it the last 2 years of his life, it's definitely a speed freak with highs and lows and complete loss of concentration and so on. So when we talk about, we should just legalize all the drugs. No problem. What could go wrong? We'll tax it. Well, we've done that before. Didn't work out so well. This is another way of trying to engineer people, okay? Especially this stuff. Okay? They can stay awake longer, they can do stuff, they don't hurt, so forth. We're engineering better living through chemistry. Doesn't always work. That's all of this era, okay? 1919, 1928 of this. I can impose a future. I can make you better. Don't worry. Just do what I said. Last question before we talk about the writing exam. What were the Bolsheviks trying to create? And what the Soviets, let's just see if there's another. What futures were the Nazis trying to create? How about the eugenicists? And we'll just throw in the Japanese. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the assignment for this week. This is not everything you have to read, so don't freak out. A lot of this stuff is simple stuff. So everybody's going to get a packet of this. And you read the, what would you do at the World's Fair? 1959, you're 18-ish. 1939, well, whatever. And you went there. What would you do? What would you see? What would you buy? What would What would be? What would you want to see while you're there? So, everybody's packet has a pretty picture, several different maps. For example, I love this one. Introducing the Lincoln Tunnel. Ooh. Fairgrounds. This one is a really nice one. Has a sort of false perspective. This one has a list of all the subways at the time. Okay. Now, half of you are going to do a day before September 1st, 1939, and half of you are going to do a day after that day. What happened on that day? Very important day. Usually I don't say anything that say dates are important, but that's an important day. Okay, World War II in Europe begins. It's begun in Asia. It's been going on for like 8 years. Germany invades Poland. Britain, France declare war, and the whole. Hopefully you've read a little bit about that. Okay, so half of you are going to get the day before, a couple weeks before. So in your packet is a poster for. This would have opened a week after you went to the World's Fair, so you would have seen these posters everywhere. Everybody know what Life magazine is or was? Okay, this is the cover of the Life magazine. You would see. This is the cover, August 17th. Cover of the Chicago Daily Tribune. You don't have to read all these things. Don't. If you read the headlines, I'll be happy. Besides, you can't read some of it. The New York Times. The Sporting News. Now, every day, the fair had a newspaper of its own. So you get a copy of that. You'll take, that's a movie camera of the day. It is the Cinekodak 8 Model 25. This is not the manual for it, it's just a, wow, it's cool, it's great, it's one. You have a certain amount of time, I think it's listed here. Yeah, 8 minutes of action in 30-second segments. So the question is, what would you film? It doesn't have to be at the fair. I mean, you may say, well, I'll just film around New York City. Whatever, it's up to you. This is you, age 18, going to the world of tomorrow. By the way, it's still, or you still wind it up and it still works. And the New York World's Fair coming. With lots of nice, colorful pictures about stuff. So this is what you will have. I'm going to give everybody a copy. So the people for September get September 4th, 1930. And you get different newspapers, basically. And the thing to remember for you August 17th is you don't know the war is coming. There's all this weird noise going on in Europe. But no war. Hitler's saying things, the Polish are saying things, the English are saying things. But you'll notice that most of the headlines are baseball. Right? The Red Sox are doing this. So, and the people who are after September 4th, think about how this noise, which is still, it's a continent away. There's a whole ocean between you and this war. And we are not involved. We won't be involved for another year and a half. But the thing is, does that make you look at different things at the World's Fair, knowing that there's a war going on over there? Because remember, you're going to see a place that is called the world of tomorrow. They say they're going to show you what the future is like. And so the question is, do you believe it? What do you think of it? When you're walking through New York, if you go, because you're supposed to leave from New Brunswick and go to the World's Fair. So you're going to go through New York City, probably. And so you're going to see in the newsstand, you're going to see those newspapers. For you guys before September 1st, you're going to see posters of The Wizard of Oz, which everybody knows talking about. It's a big deal movie. It was immensely popular. And the rest of the other ones, you're going to see things about, I think, baseball. Immensely important at the time. But remember, at the time, there was 3 New York teams. Baseball was a big deal in New York at the time because there were 3 teams. 2 national, and 1 American.
There was no TV or entertainments.
Yeah. Well, I mean, your news was either from the radio or from what we call newsreels in the movie theater. Before the movie, they would show you, it was basically a review of the news of the week. Thank you all.